Hello, my friends. I have Sarah Willoughby on the show today. She is an infertility and transformational coach. She's a best-selling author, and then she is also a speaker and a Reiki practitioner. So a lot of things that Sarah does, and I'm really excited to interview her today. I found Sarah through listening to another podcast, the Miracles Happen podcast, Dr. Maria Rothenberger, and I was just so moved and touched by Sarah's story. I think she's got a brilliant message to share. And I think a lot of people will be able to relate to what we're going to be talking about today. So, hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Hi, Nora. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. And as you can tell by her accent, I love it that we are across the world from each other. You're from Australia, right?
I am living in Australia, but I'm originally from the UK, so I've got a bit of a half-half accent going on.
Yeah, yes, yes. Well, thanks for being here. And I want to talk to you today because, again, you've got an important message to share. And for those who are listening to this, they'll already see the title of this podcast. And it's going to be the title of what her book is, which is Infertility Saved My Life, which some of us might be like, huh? What does that mean? Infertility saved my life? Because a lot of us really in this community who are struggling with getting pregnant find this to be such a stressful, challenging time in our lives that how could it actually save our life? So, Sarah is going to share with us her story today and all of the wisdom that she has learned from her journey. And I'm really excited to get into it, Sarah. So, why don't I'll just leave it over to you and let you get started with sharing your story, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay, thank you. So I'm originally from the UK, I've just mentioned that, and I spent 6 years at university. I spent 10 years working in corporate HR for large multinational organizations. And I worked my way up the corporate ladder and I got there and I felt really disillusioned and stuck, but didn't know how to leave. I felt like, ironically, I was too old to leave this career that I hadn't been in for too long. At the same time, I was going on this crazy journey through secondary infertility. I'd already been blessed to have a little boy. Everything was fine with that. He'd been born 2 months prematurely, so that had been a bit tricky. But other than that, everything had been going well, and I had no reason to believe that I was going to struggle to have a second child. But what transpired was a lot of loss and grief and trauma. And I really didn't at that point know how to navigate through that. And I was exceptionally stressed and just felt a lot of shame and guilt and all the things that so many people on this podcast will be able to relate to. So my story peaks where I was told that if I wanted to have another child, I should go through IVF. So I'd already had a missed miscarriage the year before, and we hadn't had the best care with the hospital that was working with us at that point. So I naively decided that we would go over to Norway and make a holiday out of the whole process to try and take some of the stress out of it and to be away somewhere different when we were going through the awful 2-week wait. But what actually happened was my body reacted very badly to the drugs, and I overstimulated and then hyperstimulated and ended up in intensive care in the most excruciating physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional pain you can imagine. And there was nothing that the doctors could do to stop my deterioration. They could just treat each symptom as it arose. I watched my 3-year-old son walk out of the hospital doors with his grandma, and he looked at me and he smiled. He was going back to the UK. And I felt so just devastated because I didn't know whether I'd ever see him again. And I realized in that moment that I had to make some changes in my life. If I was given a second chance at life, I had to start walking towards my fears, being authentic, speaking my truth. I'd lived my life by the expectations that everybody else had of me at that point. And I just followed this path of, like I said, education, career, all the things from the outside looking in. I had it all, but I just wasn't happy. So I don't think I fully realized in those moments how seriously sick I was, even though there was a lot going on. So I had fluid on my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I'd put on so much weight, all the fluid in my body. I was at risk of blood clots. I went for scans to find out whether I had heart failure. It was really, really humbling to be in this body that I didn't know whether it was going to be strong enough to pull through. And I realized that I'd spent a lot of my time hating my body, berating myself, being critical. And I made a promise to myself that if I did recover, I would be kinder to my body. I would walk towards my fears. I would try to be my best version. I would change my life, and I would actually empower people to do the same. So when one of the consultants came in to speak to me late one night, she put her hand on my leg and she looked deeply into my eyes and said, "You've been really lucky." At that point, my body had started to respond and started to reverse the process. So it's just a waiting game while the body does that. And I really thought, okay, this is my opportunity to change my life. So I recovered, thankfully, and was told I could never go through IVF again because it would kill me. But I had been fortunate enough to go through the embryo transfers. You know, the embryos had been collected, so I was able to go through a frozen embryo transfer. And I went back to Norway, and I got pregnant with twins, and I was so excited. I was like, yay, I'd always wanted twins. I had this romantic notion of what twins was going to be like. You know, it's probably far from the truth. It's probably a lot of hard work, but I was
Again, the
excited.
romantic notion, right? The
Exactly.
idealization of it.
Exactly. And I was so excited. I was like, this is why it happened this way. This is how it's meant to be. And at the same time, throughout all of that, we'd made a decision that we were going to emigrate over to Australia to begin a new life. And we didn't know anybody, and we had no jobs to come to, and we were just going to throw everything up in the air and see where it landed, because I had nothing left to lose. And now we were going over to live in Australia as a family of 5, the perfect end to a really difficult story, except it didn't go like that. I lost one of the twins, and then unfortunately I lost the other one. And so we still moved out to Norway, but this time as a family of 3. And I really came to a place of surrender and acceptance, of feeling like, I think my journey is coming to an end, but what I need to focus on is being present with my son. I realized I'd spent so much time in my head thinking about the next baby, planning for that, and I hadn't been truly present with my beautiful boy. And I still have regret over that even now. But within 6 weeks of being in Australia, I fell pregnant naturally with my daughter, who is now 12. And then 4 years later, I went on and had another little girl who is 8. And I never went back to the corporate world. I began to really understand the connection between our mind, body, and spirit. And I just put into place all of these new ways of living life and totally transformed my life and began my business and do what I'm doing now, which I love. So it has been the biggest blessing. And that's why my book is called Infertility Saved My Life. And I'll show you the front cover.
Beautiful. I'm going to make sure to link that in the show notes below, so that if anybody wants to see, that looks, I can imagine you get into the nitty gritty just based on the short little thing that you just shared right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the first part of it is my story, my journey to become a mother to 3 children. So from the point that I was diagnosed with PCOS, I should probably say that I do have PCOS. And then the second part is all the tools, techniques, wisdom, and insight that I learned along the way that fundamentally didn't just change my life, but saved my life, and that anybody can incorporate into their own lives to move forward with a bit more ease and grace. So it's been quite the journey, but I just feel really blessed to be on the other side. And I want to be able to help anybody who's still in it to know that there is hope and that we can take charge of our journey to motherhood or fatherhood in a journey that is very disempowering. That was what I'd found, was it's very disempowering, and you have a lot of people controlling your body and all the appointments, and it can be such a minefield.
So I want to ask a question about when you first went through that first round of IVF that gave you the hyperstimulated ovaries, and you said you were in a hospital bed. So with all of these health conditions, you were saying there was fluid in your lungs. So just to clarify, was that time in the hospital, was that was it like a combination of just like your like a overstressed, overworked body combined with the stress of the fertility treatment and what it did to your body that it just shut everything down? Or was all of the like when you were like in that hospital bed just wondering how is the day going to proceed and treating the symptoms as they go, was that solely a response to the hormones that they were giving you?
Yes. Yeah. It was solely a response to the hormones. I was at an
Wow.
increased risk of overstimulation, which I knew, but it was sold to me as sort of like, I think less than 1% chance that I would end up overstimulating because I had PCOS and I was under 35 at the time.
Okay.
And therefore, the chance of hyperstimulation and ending up in ICU and ending up with them not really being able to do anything, just wait and watch and see how your body responds, is so slim that you take those odds, don't you? You take that chance because your desire, your biological desire to hold a healthy baby in your arms is so
Mhm.
much stronger than your less than 1% chance that you're going to end up in that situation. So
Mhm.
it is very, very rare. And I share the story saying, you know, don't be afraid of IVF because it is
Mhm.
exceptionally rare and it's an amazing process that can support so many people to have a baby. But I do wish that I had understood, I think, where it could end up. I was very naive about that. I didn't know that at the time. You know, they don't
Mhm.
share that with you, of course.
Mhm. Mhm. And then you went on for a second round, and then you went on for a second round with you just did the embryo transfer. You couldn't do the egg retrieval again and do all those hormones because of what had happened the
Yes.
first time.
Yeah, I couldn't go through a fresh round of IVF. So I had 10 frozen embryos
Right.
in the freezer. That was my hope of having a baby. And in
Right.
Norway, they put two back at a time to increase the chances.
Mhm.
Because back then the all those years ago, the chances of getting pregnant with a frozen embryo transfer was actually quite small, whereas I think the results have improved now. There isn't as much difference between a fresh transfer and a frozen embryo transfer. So I think there's been a lot of progress in that area over the last however many years, 12 years. So
Mhm. And then when you lost the twins, was it early on in the pregnancy?
yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was before 12 weeks. But with every pregnancy that I had, because I'm so slim, I'd felt every baby move inside me. I knew I was pregnant from the minute that I was pregnant and had
Mhm.
had, you know, all the things going on. And obviously with a missed miscarriage, everything is still growing and your body is still releasing all the pregnancy hormones. It's just that the baby has died or the heartbeat has
Yes.
stopped inside. So again, I didn't even know what a missed miscarriage was until I'd had my first one. And by the time I had my second and third, I kind of wasn't surprised that it went that way. I was a bit more prepared. But the
Mhm.
first one, I was absolutely devastated about. And if I can just take a moment just to share a song that was sent to me in 2020. So in 2020, when we were in COVID and lockdown, I received a message from a band manager of a band called Olivia Fox in America. And the band manager sent me this song and said, I think you might want to listen to this. And at first I thought it was just spam. So I wasn't even going to open it. You know, it's a link to something you don't know somebody. Do you
Yeah.
press it? But for whatever reason I did. And I listened to that song and it's called Elevator Doors. And it's written by the lead singer-songwriter who's called Lauren Flynn.
Mhm.
And she's written this beautiful song about the day that she found out that she was having a miscarriage. And that for me, listening to that song was so healing. And it makes me cry even now listening to it. The words are just very apt. And it really has helped me on my healing journey. And I've since connected with Lauren and interviewed her. And she's gone on and made other beautiful music. So I share that song in my book as well. I would really encourage people to find that. It's called Elevator Doors and the band is called Olivia Fox.
I'm
Because I
writing it
think
down
that,
right now and I'm going to put it in the show notes. Elevated
yeah,
Doors, Olivia Fox. I'll find it.
elevator doors. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll
And
find
Olivia
that.
Fox.
I'll find it somewhere, maybe on YouTube or something, and I'll make sure to
Yes.
link it in the
Yeah.
show notes. No, thank you for sharing that. There's so many different, I think, messages and communication can comes through to us, and it's divine timing in so many different ways, right? Whether it's through an animal,
Mm,
through nature, through a song, through I mean, it's totally just dependent on the individual. So I love that you shared that, and could be a resource for sure that might help somebody else who's listening to
Mm.
this too. Um, okay, so I'd love to then know. So then, okay, so you had your miscarriage with the twins, and then you decided to leave Norway and then move to Australia, family of three. What was the time span in between you leaving Norway, kind of almost like leaving that life behind, kind of starting fresh, starting new, getting to Australia, and maybe just walk us through what, like, your mindset, the process of just how you really maybe shifted your mindset, and how you think you ended up getting pregnant naturally just based on the transition and the change that you made.
Yeah, sure. So I was actually living in the UK at the time.
Oh,
I'd
I'm
gone
sorry,
to
the
Norway.
UK.
No, that's okay. Yeah, it's a bit confusing, isn't it? There's 3 different countries to navigate through. I
Yeah.
get confused as well. So yeah, I'd gone to Norway for treatment
Right.
because I was not, yeah, naive enough to think I could make a holiday out of it. So I can see
Right.
the irony in that now and actually laugh about it. So yeah, so what I was very lucky that I had learnt meditation before I went through IVF, and I'd already done hypnotherapy sessions, which I know fundamentally saved my life. If I hadn't have learned how to meditate, I wouldn't have been able to go on that sort of mental mindset challenge that I was presented with. So it became an extension of that. I realized when I was lying in hospital how powerful meditation was, because I literally couldn't breathe. I was gasping for every breath and I felt like I was drowning. And so all I had was what was going on in my mind to help me to overcome the physical challenges and the emotional challenges that I was dealing with in hospital. So I became very committed to that practice. And I also started to deeply connect with nature and just went outside and just walked and breathed. And our energy changes so much when we move into a space of being, not doing. So that process and meditation really helped me to make those decisions in those moments of fear and self-doubt, which we all have, that no, I'm on the right path and I still need to follow this and I need to move, even though it made no logical sense. We were also in the middle of recession in the UK at the time. So if it hadn't have worked out, we wouldn't even have been able to come back to be able to, reclaim our jobs or whatever. It was a big financial risk for us to do that. When I moved over to Melbourne, I had this really pivotal moment where I was lying on my bed, and for the first time in my life, I felt peaceful. I felt no anxiety. I just felt peaceful, and I felt like I'd come home. And so there was this massive sort of energetic shift and this realization that there was so much more going on other than the physical experience, our body experience of going through fertility treatment and going through infertility. So I just really dived into all of that, and I became very curious about my intuition. And I started to develop that and use that to guide me to make my decisions. I learned that my heart was my master thinker, not my mind. And there's a lot of beautiful science-based research that's been done on the Heart Math
Yeah.
Institute. I'm sure you've heard of that. So I encourage people to dive into that and take a look. And I think once I realized all of those things, I knew that there was so much more to life that I wasn't understanding, and began to understand this whole mind, body, spirit connection, and that I couldn't change my fertility journey in terms of, necessarily what was going on from a physical perspective. I still had PCOS. I couldn't change that. But I could take some responsibility for how I responded to situations, for the amount of stress that I was feeling, for how I showed up for myself every day, for the messages that I was telling myself in my mind. Because a lot of this journey, I think, is a mental battle as much as anything else. We have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 90% of those are repeated from the day before, and 80% of those are negative. So it doesn't leave a lot of space for loving thoughts and creative problem solving, and just to be in the present moment, which is the only place we can be to actually make change. So I just started researching spiritual mentors and teachers and mindset, and learning more about meditation. And I learned lots of different ways to meditate as well. And just truly fell in love with this journey of self-discovery. And that's what took me on this journey to self-love. And I realized that I had everything inside me, all the answers inside me. I just needed to learn how to get still, to hear that guidance, and then be brave enough to take action.
I love that. I resonate with that so much. And that's also a part of just, I mean, taking the moment. I'm such a doer. I think a lot of us are such doers, and we're
Yes.
praised for doing. The, culture
Mm,
in society is, hustle hard, work hard to achieve all your goals, like go, 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 get it done. But like we burn ourselves out. And again, we're not creating that space in our body and in our mind to allow for those intuitive whispers to pop up that have the answers for us. And so we're like just this in this hamster wheel, continuing to go, 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 go,
mm,
go, go, go. And for so many people, it's so many different catalysts in their life that will be the catalyst to get them to say, okay, enough. Like I'm done with this. Whether it's having this traumatic experience and being in the hospital bed because of your reaction to the medications, to a breakup in a relationship, to whatever it might be. It's
mm.
it's so I love that you can take these challenging times and then totally flip it on its head and make them your shifting that perspective. What is it that I'm learning from this, as opposed to playing that victim and saying, well, why is this
Mm.
happening to me, and poor me, and just being harder on yourself. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I would love to ask if like what were some what would be some maybe little tips or suggestions to really help somebody to like hone in and to listen to their intuition? Do you have like a um is there something that you can share from your experience, other just saying like sit and meditate? Because I know people hear that and
Yes.
sometimes they'll be like, oh, but I can't meditate, or we hear all the excuses. But
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to hear if there's like some few little tangible tips that maybe you can pass along, that someone can be like, hey, I can try that today.
Okay, so one really fun, simple, basic exercise that you can do that I learned from Sonia Choquette, who is a spiritual mentor and teacher. She talks about getting a deck of cards and literally turning the deck of cards over initially and saying, okay, what card is going to be coming up next? Is it going to be a red card or is it going to be a black card? And then you will get to a point where you can go through a whole pack of cards and get every single one right. Then you can take
Wow.
it a step further and you can say, okay, is it going to be, which suit is it going to be? Heart, spade, club, and what's the other one?
Heart,
Diamond.
spade, club, diamond. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Yay, remembered. So then you can decide, okay, so what suit is going to come up, and you can keep doing this over and over again, because it's a muscle that we just need to train. We've all got
Yes.
intuitive guidance. We're all born with intuition. It's just about practicing. And we could get to a point where we can start turning cards over and actually knowing what specific card is coming next. So that's something that you can do quite simply and quickly. You can do it every day and just make it fun. This journey of self-discovery is supposed to be fun. And I think we often put a lot of pressure on ourselves, particularly if we, as you've just mentioned, work in the corporate world, have been stuck in education, have had all these expectations placed on us about doing all the time and achieving, and we are worthy when we have success, and we have all these labels and we are all these things to everybody else. But actually, when we're in a state of being, that's where we can truly connect with who we are, and that's where we can make amazing changes in our life, in all areas of our life, both professionally and personally. So that's a really simple tip. I've already mentioned it, but connecting with nature is where I get a lot of my intuitive downloads. So being in water is really good. Being in water enables us to release our emotions, which on this journey is so incredibly critical. But being in water also helps you to be very present and very grounded. And that's where I get all my intuitive guidance. So when I swim in my pool, I get all this download, I get all these creative thoughts, I get things to write about, I get solutions to my problems. So, if you can find the ocean, a pool, a lake, a river, if you can't find those things, sit in a bath with some salts and just be. you'll start to notice that that will come through. Some people get their guidance through when they're boiling the kettle, ironically, or when they're having a shower. So
Shower.
yeah, so
Does
there's
it have to
lots of
do with the
different ways.
ions? Does it have to do with like the ions in the water and the way I wonder, I don't know, I feel like I've heard something is coming up in my brain as to like why, or I don't know. I think I read something. I have a book, what's this called? Mind to Matter by Dawson Church. And he talks about
Okay.
like we're literally manifesting our entire worlds through our mind, which is
Yeah,
crazy and weird to think about.
I
Um,
know.
but he talks, I think, about water. There's like some water component in there. Sorry, I digress, interrupt you, but I thought it had something to do with the
No,
ions.
no. Yeah, that's good. No, and I think part of it too is that we're just a lot more relaxed in water. And also we're made up of water, aren't we? The majority of
Yes.
our body is made up of water, so we have that natural connection with it. So that's something else that we can do. I also get guidance when I go and stand under the night sky or go and watch sunset or sunrise.
Hmm.
Those things we can incorporate into our lives. I appreciate that some people are busy and they might not be able to do that every single day, but even if you just start by doing it once a week and put aside one evening a week to go and watch sunset, or one night a week just to go and stand outside, even just for 5 minutes, and just breathe
Hmm.
deeply, because often we're breathing from our chest and we're not
Hmm.
breathing from our diaphragm, and we put a lot of stress and pressure on our body when we don't breathe correctly. But when we breathe correctly, that's where our wisdom is, that's where our guidance is as well. So very, very, very powerful stuff.
And when you breathe into the belly, you're stimulating chemicals and hormones that are stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which puts you into your rest and digest state. Whereas when you're breathing into your chest, it's more stimulating your sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, which is not going to be conducive to having these open creative thoughts that are allowing the intuition to come up. So just as something as
Exactly.
simple as belly breathing can, really put you in a much more calm, relaxed state. And I will say as well, I see this with a lot of my clients, is that when you are in the fertility, when you're struggling with infertility and maybe going through multiple rounds of IVF, or seeing this practitioner and that practitioner, and everybody's giving you advice on what to do, and you're in such a feared state on like, well, I feel like this is the next thing I have to try. This is the next thing I have to try. This is the next thing I have to try. Where it's like when you can create that space and then listen inside of you, your intuition will tell you whether or not the IVF
Mm.
protocol is the best one for you, if this doctor is going to be the best one for you. But I find because we have that fear layered on top of, I just want this baby, maybe this is the next best
Mm.
step, without taking the time to sit, create the space, and let the intuition guide you. Yes, maybe this situation will be presented to you, but it's not something you need to jump on right away or go for that sixth round of IVF because the last five didn't work.
Mm.
Take
Mm.
that space. And it's hard because people then feel the pressure of time. Like there's so many
Yes,
variables
yes,
that keep
exactly.
compounding the situation. And sometimes not doing anything, and I could speak for everybody, feels counterproductive. What do you mean I could get things done by actually not doing something? We can. We there's a lot that we can get done by pulling back. So I find sometimes it's a lot of it is just like reframing this in our mind. And then, we've got to start rewiring those neural pathways in the brain because we're
Mm.
programmed to like, we just constantly have to be doing, make the decision, go to the next IVF cycle, do, without pulling back. And then when we do pull back, that can feel stressful, but utilizing those tools to kind of get back down into the grounded state, like you said, which you ended up doing, and then you found all of this space, which taught you so much about yourself. And now look where you are on the other end of this.
Yes, and I think how exciting, you mentioned we can change our neural pathways. How exciting that we now know that we can, that we're not stuck with the brain that
Yes.
we were born with. That means that we're in charge of things. That means that we can have an input into this journey. And I really encourage people to check out Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh,
He's
love
got
him.
some he's amazing. I've been really lucky enough to hear him speak live. He came to
No
Melbourne.
way. I'm
Yes,
jealous.
I know my brain was completely fried after the hour because he speaks so quickly and he's so clever. but I learned so much from him, and I love he's got so many videos on YouTube, and I love all the stuff that he does around manifestation and meditation, and the science that they've done around how our brain changes. And so definitely check out Dr. Joe Dispenza if you haven't already discovered him.
One of my first books that I found from him was, I think it was called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I was like, well, that's an
Yes.
interesting title. And that's a great book because it teaches you first about just like the mind states, the different brain waves where we're at throughout the day. When you drop into that meditative state, we're in the alpha brain waves, where when we're in like the regular everyday working state, we're in the beta brain wave state. We don't drop into alpha very much if we're not doing meditating a lot. And that's where you can find, that's where then your body releases healing chemicals. Like, it's phenomenal what he's done, and how much research they've done, and what, again, how much we can change our life, our health, everything, just from changing our thoughts. It's bonkers, in my opinion. I love it. I'm obsessed with this stuff.
Yeah, I know. I love it too. I'm like a little kid in a sweet shop. I'm just like, give me more. I want to learn more, you know? I feel like
Yeah,
I'm just at the beginning of my journey of
yes.
understanding all of this. I mean, I'm not, but I feel like I am, because there's just so many more things coming out all the time that they're learning about how our brain works. It's great.
Yeah. I have to ask you, Sarah, are you familiar with Gaia? Do you know Gaia?
Yes.
It's like Netflix. I call it Netflix for spirituality.
Yes.
It's my
Yes.
Netflix. I just watch Gaia all the time. I think I've gone through every episode. I'm like, give me something new. But Gaia is amazing for like
Yes.
just a huge database of all of these types of videos, meditations that really allow you to tap into these states. So, Sarah, I want to ask, tell us about kind of what you do. So you're an infertility and transformational coach. What does that mean?
Okay. So I work with people from a general coaching perspective, so transformation coach. So I really help people to deeply connect with themselves and find that inner wisdom and transform their lives from the inside out. So we go on a massive healing journey. I'm also a Reiki practitioner and an energy healer. So we incorporate the healing into those sessions as well. And then I work specifically with people who are on their infertility journey, to really get themselves in the best place possible from a mind, body, spirit perspective, to be able to give themselves the best chance of holding a healthy baby in their arms. So I love that work, and I think regardless of the outcome of that, the journey that you go on, that self-discovery journey, that healing journey, that being able to take, I liken our journey as, we're like an onion, and we've got layers and layers of stuff that we need to remove, and then we realize that there's lots more and there's still more until we get to this like the heart of each issue, and we're like, seriously, I thought I was done with that. And we have to keep going. But I think it's something that changes the rest of your, changes your life and sets you up for success in all areas of your life. So it's worth doing that journey. But if I can reach people before they're at a point where they're desperate, where they've gone through 10 rounds of IVF, where they're struggling financially to pay for that treatment, where they're feeling the pressure of the biological clock ticking, if I can reach people before that place, then that's what I love to do, because I know that me understanding that mind, body, spirit connection just absolutely enabled me to have my two beautiful girls. And I really wish that I'd learned that previously. But also, I'm grateful for the journey, because like you said, otherwise I wouldn't be here, right? And I would have still been living this life that lacked resonance. If I'd had my children really quickly and easily, I would still be stuck in the corporate world in the UK, doing a job that paid beautifully, but not being present with my children and not living a heart-centered life that I am now. So I have a lot of gratitude for it,
And
even though
not
it
being
was hard.
fulfilled, right? Not being fully
Yes.
fulfilled in what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
I
often
also
when,
come, sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
Karen.
I was going to
I
say,
was
I
just
also
going to
come
say,
from, I
no,
also
you
come from the
go.
corporate world. I also come from the HR world as well. So when you said that, I was like, oh, we have
Ah,
similarity. Yeah, I did that for about 7 years. And then I've got my own story on how I left and came into where I am today. But it's like
yeah.
the most fulfilling and rewarding thing that like I have ever done. ever. So
It
I
really
feel
is,
that
isn't it?
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't, for me, it's not work. For me, it's just an extension of my life. And I feel so blessed to be able to do this work every single day. I love it. And people say to me, like, I've just done a 3-day coaching, speaking, writing, podcasting conference, and it was Canadian time. So I worked through the night. I did 12-hour, 3-night shifts. And everybody was like, how do you do it? And I'm like, because I love what I do. I love
Mhm.
what I do. And when we're in that state of joy and our vibration is higher, we naturally attract those things that we want into our lives so much more easily. I
Mhm.
think what I didn't understand until I moved over to Australia was that I had been hustling and I'd been working hard and I'd been going after all the things, this whole sort of like very masculine way of seeing the world. And when I moved over here, I moved very much more into my feminine and just allowed things to naturally come to me. And life just unfolds when we're in that space of joy and our vibration is right. We just allow things to come to us naturally with ease and grace. And we feel
Mhm.
that. I feel that in my body. And, you know, opportunities come into my inbox and I don't even have to do anything. They come in while I'm sleeping. And, you know,
Yes. Yes. It's the law of attraction. You're attracting it
yes,
because you're vibrating in that higher frequency. So you're pulling it. I'm reading another book called Feel Free to Prosper, which is all about manifesting the financial abundance that you want. And I've got some cool stories of what
beautiful.
happened to me when I was reading that book too. And I'm like, whoa, this stuff works.
Yay. Well, you'll have to tell me when you come on my YouTube channel. You have to tell
Yes.
me all about it.
Absolutely. And I want to say about your onion, I remembered when you were sharing about the onion is you were saying we have to peel layers of that onion to get to the middle. And it's like sometimes when we peel that layer of the onion, oh boy, does it make us cry. We peel another layer and oh boy,
Yes.
it's gonna make us cry. Right. And you just so yeah, like funnily enough, you said onion and it makes us cry too. So yes, it's a lot
Yeah.
of that, a lot of that, but it's such a when you do cry and you go through when you feel those
Mm.
emotions as much as it hurts and feels uncomfortable at the time, also remember like you're going through such a transformation. Like this is the process of transforming when you're going through that. And it's hard to remember that or, be excited about that when you're in the pain and the hurt of it. But
Mm.
it's true. I'm going on my transformation journey too. And I've kind of gotten to this place of surrender in the last 6 months. And again, I'll share
Mm.
this when we hop on your
Yeah.
story on your channel. But it feels so nice to be here. Like it feels. I'm like, why did it take me so long to get here? You mean I could have felt like this 10 years ago?
Yes, I know, I know. And I really encourage, I just agree completely with everything you just said. I really encourage you to allow those emotions to come to the surface and to cry. Because if you don't, it doesn't mean that they go away. It just means that we suppress them. And then when they come up to be healed at some point, which we have no control over, it can be very, one, inconvenient when it comes up, and two, it can be pretty full on. And I've actually been through that recently myself, because obviously with the release of my book, it's like birthing another baby into the world,
Oh
and
yes.
writing my story, which has been a very transformative and healing process. It's like there's so much stuff that I'd forgotten and that I hadn't dealt with at the time, that's just been coming up slowly, like, okay, now it's ready to be seen, now it's ready to be healed. And that's been coming out through deep grief and lots of crying. And at the time, because I've got a business coach, I was talking to him about it and I was saying, I'm not enjoying this at all. And he's just, like, feel to heal and just sit with it and don't place any judgment over it. And I'm like, yes, I know that, but I'm not enjoying it. And then when you just let go and you're just like, okay, do with me what you will. I'm here, I'm present, I'm just surrendering again. When you get on the other side of that, whoa, you can really up level again. You can really step into your truth, step into your power, step into your potential. It's so liberating. It really is. Like you, I wish I'd learned this 10 years ago, and I wish I'd done the healing 10 years ago, so I wasn't having to do it now. But it's just an
Mhm.
ever evolving process, an ever evolving process. So
Exactly.
be gentle with yourself. No matter where you're at on your journey, just be gentle with yourself and be kind to yourself.
Yes, 100%. I think we also have to remind ourselves that like we are human and the human condition has all of these things. Like if we were born into an easy, I mean, unless you're like Buddha or I mean, Buddha had his own story, but really like I think the process of evolving and growing is going to be painful, and we have
Mm.
to go through all of this, and in order to kind of get to where we are now, to be able to surrender and let go, because you can't. How do you really enjoy the happiness if you don't know the sadness? So it's like
Yes.
remembering that too. Like, all right, human life is 50-50. I'm going to have both. And, but using, I think, again, taking the challenges and then using them as a catalyst to grow and kind of blossom and evolve, because it's so much fun when you get to the other side of it. And sometimes when something else challenging comes, I'm like, all right, this is going to hurt, but I can't wait to see what's on the other side.
Yes,
I'm
yeah,
like, I'm
yeah,
gonna go through this hurt and pain now, but I know something better is on the other side. So we can again make it humorous sometimes. You're like, all right, here we go, bring it on. Just bring it on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But life is about duality, as you've just explained. It
Mhm.
really is. And we put up so much resistance to the stuff that we perceive shouldn't be happening to us. We
Mhm.
get into the shoulds and the coulds and the woulds in life. And who are we to judge what we should, in inverted commas, be going through? Because the biggest transformations I've had have ironically been through my pain, and I've turned my pain into my purpose. And we can all do
Yes.
that. We learn so much about ourselves in those places, and we're always going to have them because, as you've just said, we are human. To be a human is to suffer in some capacity at some point. And we're all just on this journey. We're all connected, and we're all just learning and growing and walking each other home. And that's it.
I love that. We're all growing and learning and walking each other home because we need each other to
We do.
experience all of this. And so, oh, that's so beautiful. So, Sarah, if somebody wanted to work with you, I mean, I know you're in Australia, but I'm assuming you do sessions online.
I do. Yes, I actually work predominantly online, and that's been one of the beautiful things about COVID, is that it's just opened up that whole global network, and people have realized that you can actually achieve so much online. It doesn't have to be face to face, and energy has no boundaries. So the healing can occur regardless of whether you're sat in the same room as somebody. So my website is the best place to go to connect with me. That's sarahwilloughby.com.au. I'm also on LinkedIn, Sarah Willoughby 2019, and Facebook and Instagram, Sarah Willoughby Australia. So do reach out and connect with me. I would love to support you on your journey, and people can reach out to me for a free 15-minute consultation and just see if we're a good fit. I love to work with people that we vibe with each other. I think that's really, really
Yes.
important. It's such a personal journey, such a personal, vulnerable time. So it needs to work on both sides. And I think you can figure that out in having a little chat and seeing where you're at. And I can share some tips and wisdom, regardless of whether somebody chooses to work with me or not. So yeah,
Well,
please connect.
yeah, I'll make sure to all of those links will be in the show notes below. So we'll get your book down there, the Elevated Doors song, all of the ways that you can connect with Sarah. And thank you so much, Sarah, for being vulnerable and courageous to share your story, in your book, and just putting this out there. And also for coming onto this podcast and being able to shed some of your wisdom into my community. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I've learned a lot from you. So I can't wait to have you on my YouTube channel and see what other wisdom you have to share with my
Yes.
audience. So thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.